What's up, everybody? What's up? Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to today's show. Today's live, we're going to be talking about poor engine brakes. So if you have engine brakes that are not working correctly, and you have like low where it's not braking enough for you, and I know you guys are big fans of engine brakes. I know you guys love making the noises on the engines, but today I'm going to be talking about what an engine brake is, what it does, what kind of issues you can look for, and how it operates. I appreciate everybody that's joined us today and today's live. If you can take something away from this video, that's going to be my goal. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe to our channel. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for service, you need some troubleshooting done on your truck, you can call us at 972-225-3017. We have a friendly staff up front and the technicians ready to go in the back. Hope you guys like all the information we've been sharing, all the photos, everything from the shop. We've been sharing everything so you guys can get an insight of what's going on in the shop. So today we're going to be talking about poor engine brake performance. Okay, so what is an engine brake and what does it do? Okay, an engine brake is basically, it's a solenoid that sits on top of the exhaust side of a valve train system, and what it's going to do is going to restrict the exhaust valve from actually opening all the way. Now what this does is kind of suffocates the cylinder a little bit, so that's why you get that brrr kind of. So it is okay to use engine brakes. Engine brakes are actually going to be mostly activated by a solenoid, whether it's going to be most of them are going to be controlled by oil pressure. So oil pressure and electronic solenoid is what's going to trigger it on. So we're going to be discussing what's actually how it happens, what it does, and what to look for. So if you have engine brakes that, for example, are braking very well, or they were braking very well, now all of a sudden you have some poor braking with your engine brakes, make sure to get your valves adjusted at 500,000 miles. If you don't have any records of your engine being your valve adjustments being done around those times, then definitely is going to be time to get that done. So don't overlook that. Whenever you do your valve adjustments up top, you do also want to do your engine brakes. But what I wanted to make sure to mention is not all shops are going to invest in the right tools. There's specialty tools that are needed to actually adjust engine brakes for every different model. So the DD platform has its own brake tool, engine brake tool. Volvo has its own engine brake tool. They all have different ways that they're adjusting the valves. And one thing, as I mentioned before, in my other videos about the diagnostic software, a lot of the troubleshooting that we're gonna end up doing to figure out what's going on with these engine brakes is gonna be on a computer. So and we do this because we don't want to, as I mentioned before, we don't want to break anything down. We don't want to have to get into more than what we have to. So troubleshooting with software is definitely the way to go. So what we're going to be looking for is, as I mentioned, oil pressure is what runs a solenoid. So if you're running low oil, or if you have high mileage on your oil, and you have susceptible viscosity that could be low on your oil, then changing out your oil is going to be one of the first thing that you want to do. The engine brake is not going to work at its peak until the oil is actually up to temperature. About 122 degrees is where mostly you're going to have a correct operating temperature. So your solenoids are going to be activated, of course, electronically, but across the board, the CPC, or the truck's computer, is going to be looking at different parameters. Okay, it's going to be looking at a clutch switch to see if if you have engine brakes, applied, or you have them active, you can deactivate them by hitting your clutch pedal. So there's a switch there. Okay, so that's one thing that we check with the computer without having to actually swap out any parts, is to see if the switch on the clutch is released. Okay, we actually check to see if the switches are actually sending the signal if the computer actually receives the signal. Like, for example, for the off and on switch, or medium, low, high switch, making sure that switch is working correctly. You also are going to check brake switches. Whenever you press the brake, of course, there's a switch that detects that. That's how you have your lights in the rear of the truck turn on. So your engine brake is also detecting that as well. So if you have a faulty switch that's not reading correctly, then that's definitely can give us an indication that we have an issue that's not allowing the engine brake to actually activate. So these solenoids can be a little tricky, but you can do a lot of troubleshooting without actually having to break into the truck yet. Now, we're going to get into it a little bit further, but as I mentioned, using the software, and now with the new automated systems, with Detroit coming out with their own transmission, most of all the manufacturers coming out with their own transmissions, those are more other parameters that need to be checked to ensure that your engine brake is working correctly. And guys, I wanted to share something else with you guys about engine brakes. Now, engine brakes actually work well coming down from high RPMs. Okay, so at low RPMs is not really ideal for an engine brake. Engine brakes mostly are when you have load on the engine and you're at higher RPMs. Engine brakes are more effective that way. But guys, I know you like hitting the engine brakes under the bridges and through residential areas. So if your engine brakes aren't working that well, as I mentioned, that's definitely need to look into getting a valve adjustment. If you haven't had a valve adjustment done recently, or records of a valve adjustment in the past 500,000 miles, and that's definitely something that needs to be considered. I appreciate everybody that's joining us tonight. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from. I'm going to be covering questions on the chats. It looks like a lot of people are probably busy this afternoon or this evening, so that's fine. But you can replay this, and I'm going to still go over this information for you guys. So we talked about checking out switches, parameters on clutches, also ABS. This is also things that need to be considered. So if you have an ABS light and you're having issues with your engine brake not working, then definitely gonna have you're definitely gonna have to get that checked out, because if ABS is triggered, that's not safe. It's not gonna allow you to run your engine brakes with an active fault. So on any of these parameters, switches, ABS lights, check engine lights, if you're spinning wheels, any of these are going to trigger the engine brake not to activate. So I hope this information is useful to you guys. Also, with manual transmissions, even if you have a manual transmission, you're still going to be looking at the clutch switch. That definitely has a clutch switch as well. So don't overlook that as well. Even though if you do have an automatic, or automatic or manual, you don't have to don't overlook that. You definitely still have a clutch switch that you got to look at. So we checked out with the diagnostic link or whatever software you're using, which I would always prefer using OEM software, just because we've had the best luck with OEM software. You can read all these parameters, change all these parameters. So we're visually inspecting all these switches to make sure they're actually coming on, coming off. If everything's working correctly, then we're going to be moving on to see if maybe we have something that's going to be mechanical problem. Okay, so if we have the ECM, everything's looking like the switches are in the same parameter or the correct parameter, everything's green, then we need to look more into this. Okay, so one of the troubleshooting steps on this particular subject of poor engine brake performance is you looking at your oil. We talked about if your oil hasn't been changed in a long time and the viscosity is low, that's definitely going to be a problem there. That's not going to let that oil build up enough pressure to let those engine brakes run correctly. So definitely running the right oil, because engine brakes run on oil. That's important. Making sure you don't have any exhaust leaks, intake leaks. This is all that's going to basically not let that engine brake run correctly. If you do have engine brakes that are actually working but they're poor, these are different items that need to be looked at as well. If you're equipped with an EGR, definitely need to look at EGRs when you're looking at exhaust leaks, for any exhaust leaks like that. Oil residue, if you're looking for any oil actually being passed through the valves, that's something you want to look at. And it always actually come down to a compression test as well. So when we get down to a truck and you don't have records of this truck ever having an overhead valve adjustment, doing a compression test is going to give us an indication if a cylinder's actually weak, and we would definitely recommend getting a valve adjustment done and the engine brakes. Don't skip the engine brakes, guys. If you're out there and you're getting this type of service done and you're just getting it done recently, don't skip out on the engine brake adjustment as well. If the technician isn't familiar with adjusting engine brakes and you notice that, then don't force them to do it. You might just have to take it somewhere that has experience with adjusting engine brakes. Engine brakes is a whole nother set. So it's definitely can definitely be tricky. And if you're not experienced in that, what I want to mention is sometimes you can have somebody that over adjusts make it some too tight, and you can bend the valve, because as I mentioned, these engine brakes are designed to keep the exhaust from opening all the way. So it's actually more pressure on the valve. And if they're tightening them too tight, then you're going to be putting way too much pressure on that valve, and definitely can have a premature valve failure on a head due to a bad valve adjustment being done. So if you are in this situation where you are getting a valve adjustment done, or you're shopping around, you can't make it down to TAT Express, we're in Dallas, DFW area, 972-225-3017. Give us a call to schedule an appointment. If you can't make it down to us, then make sure wherever you're going to get your valves adjustment that they are experienced with engine brakes. And as I mentioned, that's a whole nother step. Okay, so once you do all the valve adjustments, you're going to have to do engine brakes as well. And they take specialty tools. They don't all take filler gauges. Most of them don't take filler gauges. They take real long, they're actually just larger gaps. They're kind of like, they are a filler gauge, but they're just a lot thicker. So I want to do a share screen here on the different types of engine solenoids that, or how the engine brake is actually made onto the valve, or it works together with the valve. The valve assembly here. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to do the share screen here. So here, let me do a share screen here. So this is the valve assembly, rocker arm assembly of a Volvo. It's in our shop currently. So rocker arm assembly, pretty basic. You have the rollers on one side that are rolling off the cam. They follow the cam. And then on this side, you're going to have your intake and exhaust. So you see how this rubber band is here? On the front side of this assembly, there's a solenoid that's made inside here. So that solenoid is what activates here and keeps this valve from opening all the way. and that's how an engine brake works on a Volvo. Now, most of these are pretty similar, so they all run kind of like the same type of setup. So this is a DD15, and you can see here, this is the same assembly here. Okay, here you see the same, this is the same assembly, and there's your solenoid there that's going to activate and keep this exhaust valve from opening all the way. Now that's how these engine brakes work. So as when you're doing a valve adjustment, whether it's on this assembly, you see you have your adjustments for your intake, and you have adjustments for your exhaust, and to adjust the exhaust, you have to adjust the engine brakes on this one. You won't be able to skip around it. DD15, you have the intake valves on one side, and then you have the exhaust valves on the other side, which your engine brake there. So if you don't have the right tools, you can definitely get these done incorrectly. So if you skip these steps, you might not still have your engine brakes working correctly. So we're looking into the solenoid section, but before we get all the way down into this section, like all the way down into the engine, I'm just giving you more of an explanation on how it works. So if we send the computer, and the computer signals making it through here to the engine harness here. Now all these engine harnesses, wiring harnesses, rocker box harnesses, injector harnesses, they're all going to be different types of harnesses. But if you have like contamination like this one has, you can see we have some contamination here. This is something that's probably needs to be troubleshot. You want to clean it up, get your connection in there right, and then test your engine brakes again, because the last thing you want to do is actually open these engines up. I was just giving you an actual visual of how these engine brakes are made onto the rocker arm assemblies. This is the Volvo again. So we put a rubber band. These are steps that are recommended to follow. Rubber band on the solenoid, so when we actually remove this rocker arm assembly, it's not dangling all over the place. Now this is a makeshift. We probably ordered the one that we need, but this is a makeshift. But if you do have to makeshift something, make sure it's solid. Like you see how this one's just keeping the rocker arm straight. Trying to pull this off without putting an assembly on, even with the DD15, without putting something to hold these on, they're gonna turn and rotate all over the place, and definitely give you some more issues when it comes to assembly, when it goes back to assembly. And if you're working on these trucks, you want to be able to streamline this type of work, especially if you're doing it in high volumes. You want to be able to invest in the right tools to be able to get this equipment or get these assemblies off and on correctly without struggling too much. Everything's heavy, so when you're reaching over on top of the engine to actually remove these, this is a heavy assembly. This one here, of course, needs to be lifted. You have a lifting eye here, so we use a hoist to lift this one out. Very heavy. This is another photo of a DD platform, and you can see here there's the exhaust side, intake side, exhaust side, and you can see on the exhaust side there's the solenoids that we're talking about. So if the electrical harness here is everything's fine on your truck and it looks clean, and we're still not getting engine brakes and it's still not working correctly, now what we're going to have to do is come in here and look at this assembly. So what we're going to end up doing is opening the top, and this is just this is a Volvo here, but this is the whole solenoid. All engine brakes run on oil pressure. So if you have any leaks on these solenoids as well, this is something that needs to definitely be looked at as well. This solenoid here supplies oil to all the rocker arms, so this is definitely a crucial component. If you're ever breaking down a Volvo and you have to remove this and the tube that goes into the rocker arm rod, definitely replace those O-rings. Don't even chance it. So we're talking about oil also being supplied to this rocker box assembly that supplies it to this this rod that gives the oil to the engine brakes, and that's what creates that pressure. Definitely needs to be checking all of this. So, well, when we open this up, I'm looking for an image, because if this oil pressure is all the oil pressure is good and we don't have any leaks, when we look at that solenoid, let me see if I can find one with the solenoid on it, so we can see the picture of the solenoid. Okay, so if this solenoid, say for example, oil's coming through this rocker arm, okay, and the rocker arm rod here being fed up through the box, and oil's being supplied. Now I'm being covered here by chat, but okay, here we go. So oil's being supplied through here, and this solenoid kicks on. Boom. You see this solenoid? It kicks up. Now that's what takes it the difference gaps here, and it ends up not letting this open up all the way. So if we open this up and we see one open, and we see it open like all the way, and it's not retracting, that's an indication of a bad solenoid. So that's what I wanted to actually mention to you guys. If we look at all the other steps that I just mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, and we're still having issues with an engine brake, we're going to have to break it down and look at that solenoid to see if that solenoid is actually retracting. If it's not retracting, then that's going to tell us we got a bad engine brake. If you do have an engine brake that's stuck active, then it's almost like you have engine brakes on most of the time. You're going to hear it popping. It's going to make a noise. It's going to be noticeable. It's not going to be something that can be easily ignored. It's definitely going to mess with fuel consumption and horsepower. So hope you guys, hope that's useful there. That information there is useful. So we're talking about engine brake performance, low engine brake performance, troubleshooting it. I spoke about the different switches that need to be checked, and we talked about the electrical connections, making it up to the injector harness to make sure that it's not all the way full of oil. But we're going to continue moving on. I hope everybody has that's joined us today. I see we got a few comments. I'm going to get into these comments here shortly. I just wanted to stay on topic on the engine brakes. If you guys are in the DFW area and you're looking for service, make sure you guys give us a call, 972-225-3017. We are also hiring, guys, so if you're interested in joining our team, check out our careers page. You can also email us at info@tatexpressinc.com. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. And I hear a lot of things going on whenever it comes to the LTL stuff. I was reading a little bit about UPS threatening to go on strike. There's a lot of issues with the unions when it comes to yellow freight, and so I mean there is a lot of work out there, but I'm not sure what's going on with that situation there. But we're gonna get to the comments here shortly. I just wanted to make sure that I'm covering everything when it comes to your engine brakes. If I'm missing anything, let me know. We talked about any external leaks when it comes to air-to-air. We talked about exhaust leaks. If your compressor's not working correctly, if you're having valve train issues. If I had somebody that was on the show yesterday, and they were saying that they were having some rattling noise or some gear train noise. That's not gonna. If you have gear train noise, loose gears, definitely can have some issues with your engine brake not working correctly. This all works together, so all this needs to be checked out. If they're not working, if you got a high mileage truck, it might take a little bit more troubleshooting to dig into what's going on with that. So thank you guys, everybody, for joining us tonight. I know everybody's probably already ready to start their 4th of July weekend. Everybody's already off work. Who wants to hear about trucks? But I want to get to some of these questions on chat. I like talking about trucks. What else we got? Okay, if we got to break down into the solenoid, it gets to a little bit further. If we have a bad solenoid, then of course we replace that. We check the timing. What I wanted to mention when I spoke about timing and I spoke about gear train, if you have any loose gear train, this is going to cause timing to go off on the top end. A lot of these engines are overhead cams, so if you have any loose gears from the crank making its way up to the actual cams, it can mess with timing. So that's a step that's actually needs to be looked at when you're at your 500,000 mark, is checking time and make sure timing is good whenever you do your valve adjustments, especially with the Cummins platform. Is these gears on the cam are actually pressed and bolted on, so they can actually kind of turn a little bit and cause you to have some problems. Volvo has an adjustable gear, so these are all items that need to be checked. Now, whenever we check timing, usually we put a tool, a specialty tool that's on top, that's going to put us wherever the cams, whether it's a dual overhead cam or a single overhead cam, it's going to put us on the mark, and we're going to be able to put a pin somewhere in the crank, whether it's going to be through the flywheel housing or through the engine block. We're going to be able to put a pin in the crank or on the front of the engine. We're going to be able to put a pin, and that's what's going to line up the crank down at the bottom, and now we're lined up on top. That's going to verify time. Okay, if you have an issue where you can't get the pin in at the bottom, then that's giving you an indication you might have some timing issues. So definitely don't forget about checking that out. We talked about gear train, engine brake solenoids, rocker shaft removal if you have to. The rocker shaft assembly is what we were looking at earlier. This is what this is. Sorry. When you actually are on camera, you know the terminology, but when you're on camera, but this is what we've been discussing is the rocker shaft assembly. Now this is the rocker shafts, and these are the assemblies. Oil runs through these to and actually what supplies your solenoids here, and that's what we're talking about. Hope you guys were able to pick up some information from this. If you guys are using your engine brakes, make sure you're in residential areas where people are asleep and they've been working all week. Make sure you hit your engine brakes, or you're in residential cities. Make sure to hit them in those areas so that people aren't sleeping well. I know you guys like that engine brake noise, man. I was going to look up a media, but I wanted to get this show together before it got too late. Thank you guys, everybody that's joined us this evening. If you want to hit me up on Super Chat, don't be shy. Hit us up on Super Chat. I'm going to get to some of these chats here. If there is such a shortage of diesel technician, why is it so difficult to get hired as an apprentice? Okay, so I got a chat saying if there's such a shortage on diesel technicians, why is it so difficult to get hired as an apprentice? Okay, so from my point of view, we're definitely looking for someone with some experience. So the liability on working on trucks is very high. Okay, I know it may seem gravy, but the liability on working on trucks is very high. So when you have a shop that's working on this type of equipment, this heavy equipment, that's putting so many miles on the road, that's pulling so much heavy weight, then it's definitely has to be considered cautious whenever you're hiring somebody that doesn't have either the experience nor the tools, because now they're going to be using the shop tools, and most of the time, trust me, sorry about that camera. So if there's a common box there, or a box that everybody's using, those tools are going to get wore out pretty bad. They're going to end up missing. Most of the time, if a shop has a common box that people can learn off of, that apprentice is later on going to end up getting his own toolbox, and then that common toolbox just goes to crap. People, things end up missing off of it. So shops don't really have a common toolbox. There are going to be shops that have specialty toolboxes, which for just specialty items that, of course, not every diesel technician is going to have. But that's something to consider if you're looking at getting into the industry. Go ahead and email us at info@tatexpress.com if you're looking to get into the industry. And let me see, I can try to point you in the right direction. But definitely something that you got to consider whenever shops are hiring. And there is a shortage on experienced diesel technicians. These are technicians that are actually hired, just like there's a shortage on drivers, where to find a good experienced driver with a good clean record is not the same as somebody that just got their CDL. Could be a little bit more costly, and especially now with how all these different commercials about getting sued by a truck or if you ever got hit, if a truck looked at you wrong, they're talking about suing you now, which I don't understand that. Honestly, I feel like that should be illegal, the way that they promote that so much. But shout out to all the attorneys out there that are probably, maybe none of them are watching this, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like that should be illegal for them to be able to promote so much, advertise, because insurance is very high, and that's what I was going to get at when it comes to covering trucks like this. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. I didn't mean to get off on the rants about I got hit by a truck driver. I don't know what's going on with that trend. I don't know why it's even a thing. Our smaller shop, I mean, it depends on how where shop's located at. Whenever there is a change in the market, there's some areas that got more freight and some areas that got less freight. But for like Texas is we're connected to Mexico, so we get a lot of freight coming through here. Right now, there's a lot of activity going on when it comes to construction, housing. We had a guy on the show. When was that? Just a couple of weeks ago. Well, it was probably about a week ago. The guy said he was making like $4 a mile or something. $4 a mile pulling lumber to get the lumbers to the residential houses. Make sure you guys are getting your water intake out there. If you're out there driving and it's hot, don't wait till you're dehydrated. It's very tough out there, especially whether you're working on them as well. Definitely stay hydrated. I just did injectors on a Pierce fire truck with the ISM. ISM's a pretty decent engine. Allison 4000. It's a good habit to already go ahead and adjust the jakes as well. And it turns out the turbo is bad. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found that out. Thanks for sharing that. He said he just did an injector. If you're already opening it up, if you're doing an injector and you have high mileage, something over 500,000 miles, then yeah, definitely replace when you are replacing the injector, go ahead and do an overhead on that and the jakes as well. It won't hurt it. Overlooking them, it's probably going to look worse than doing them, because if you overlook them, then they're going to probably say something about that. My engine brake was staying on, running rough after I downgrade. It was the solenoid sticking and ended up replacing both. Wasn't hard to do. Took me longer to take off the valve cover. Yeah, because your air filter's in the way. Yeah, but I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, the solenoids aren't that difficult to replace, and if you got one sticking, that's pretty obvious. Whenever I was mostly talking about the troubleshooting is like if it's not kicking on for you. Everybody, thanks for joining us. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for service, give us a call, 972-225-3017. We'll be more than happy to service you. We have a friendly staff up front and technicians ready to go in the back. If you have seen us, if you have service with us, I hope that we have met or exceeded your expectations, and we'll see you down the road. Daniel, thank you for sharing that chat. That was very useful. And yeah, they're not that difficult to replace. You can get into a bind if you're trying to get those air filter housing assemblies off, and if you're not used to working on trucks, then it can be a little bit challenging. I'm curious to know what engine did you do it on. Let me know in the chat what engine you did it on, Daniel. Mom and pop shop, work on truck fleet mechanic, way better environment, and it's hourly. Okay, so I guess he was just giving his opinion on where to work. Yeah, there's more opportunity for growth when you're working as a technician, when you're working for a smaller shop, because it's kind of like corporate. Corporate it takes a little time, and it's a lengthy process to get raises and get incentives. Where smaller shops are more open to give to pay better, and the environment is different. You're right. It's not like a corporate cold-blooded environment where you get into a point where corporations get so big where it becomes a system, just a system that's being ran, and where there's no really people with characters there. And I'm not trying to put anything down, but I've worked in corporations before, so I kind of feel like, a lot of leniency happens and culture kind of just goes to crap when that leniency just continues to be acceptable and acceptable in a corporate environment. I don't see how that's really great for, and some corporations are able to do it, but you get so big sometimes that it just kind of gets a little bit degrading, or not really degrading, just not really fun to work for. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that information. Definitely some good insight, and those are facts as well. If you guys are just joining us, it was a chat basically talking about if you're a technician working for, if you would rather work for a corporation or a smaller shop. Fleets can be tough to work on as well, because there's so much pressure on those types of situations, those setups. They got so tight schedules. You said you left during COVID. Where did you leave? I got another comment here from Carlos. Highly recommend these drivers. Been using them since the day I brought my truck. Sorry, I can't read today. They even did my pre-purchase inspection and had some bad luck with the wiring harness being bad, but it's getting done. I appreciate that. Carlos says he highly recommends us drivers. He's been using us since he bought the truck. He even used us as a pre-purchase inspection, which if you're in the area, we can definitely help you. He said he had some bad luck with some wiring harness, but he's getting it done. I appreciate that comment. Thanks for joining us, and I appreciate your support. I'm glad. It sounds like we've been able to meet your expectations. If you guys are in the area, in the DFW area, and you're looking to buy a truck and you find a decent truck, if you look at some of my other videos on how to buy a truck, a used truck, make sure to follow those steps when it comes to looking for repair histories. And if the dealer's able to actually let you take that truck and get it looked at by another shop, then it definitely worth doing. I noticed a lot of the people that are selling the trucks, the salesmen or the truck sales lots are not wanting to put any money in those trucks, so they're trying to just get them out. So I appreciate that comment. That's definitely some good feedback. Give more entry-level diesel techs opportunities. Got another chat here about asking if small shops give more entry-level diesel techs opportunities. Now, I would suggest starting more at a corporation level, because they are probably going to need the work. They're going to need the oil change and the tire change people probably a lot more, and the shifts are going to be a little bit different. For example, the larger corporations like TA Pilot, they're open at longer hours, especially with the tires and stuff like that. So that's something that they're probably going to start you on, is tires, and then you can eventually work your way up to oil changes. And if you're looking as an entry-level technician, they're going to want that experience. And if you go into one of those corporations doing tires and wanting to do the dirty stuff, then they're going to definitely give you an opportunity, especially if you come in there professional and you're showing them you're not afraid to work. I'm not saying get in there and go all crazy, and take your time. Don't get hurt. There's some heavy stuff in there. If you have the right instructors, make sure to listen to them. You don't want to wear yourself out. It doesn't take brute force to work on diesel trucks. You got to start using you don't use your strength, you use leverage. You leverage with this bigger stuff. So you want to be able to last, especially with when we talked about tools last time. You want to use battery operated. You want to invest in the right tools to make the job lighter, just like truck driving. If you got the right equipment, it makes the job that much easier. If you have equipment that's kept up, it makes your job that easier. The first thing that I can think of is shocks. That's something that we look over very easily. And I know that today's subject is not about shocks, but if you have a truck that hasn't had suspension work and your shocks are shot and it's just beating you up, and that's just equipment not kept up, and you can definitely wear it. Makes you tired. It's going to make you tired, just bouncing around, driving for a long time. So it's the same thing with tools. So I appreciate that comment and that information. And I'm glad that, and we had a viewer on chat last show that was interested in getting into diesel as well. And if you guys are looking at if diesel working on trucks is not the thing for you, but you're interested in getting into the industry, there's a lot of positions that are available when it comes to either a truck driver. Truck driver is a nice job because you have some time alone. You don't have to you're not stuck at the house. You're able to get out and do things and I mean move around and not be stuck. Especially if you have if you're a type of male that wants to get away from family a little bit, that's a good opportunity for you guys to get out there and get on and be by yourself and be on your own out there and be able to make some money as well. Truck driving is not going anywhere. I mean, we talk about EVs and how EVs are taking so long to take off and yeah, they're doing automated ports to try to get things more streamlined. But if you look at California, that's already has automated ports. At the same time, they've already banned automated trucks on the highways. So they don't want automation on public highways. Yeah, in isolated areas and controlled areas like ports that they can keep humans out and well, there's no liability there. Okay, but as soon as they're on the highway and public highways, the liability just increases so much. So I don't even think they can get coverage for that, insurance coverage for that. They probably wouldn't. I don't even think an insurance company would write it. Got another comment here. What I might miss. I got from a ridiculous roll call. Driver pre-trip can save you. Yeah, a pre-trip will save you some time, man. We've been talking about troubleshooting engine brakes. I covered, using softwares, using the OEM softwares and how useful they can be without having to open things up. We're looking for switches, readings. I talked about the different things that that engine brake is used for, how it operates on oil pressure, and how it actually, all these different sensors need to be green when it comes like the clutch pedal, brake pedal. All these switches need to be reading green, which is basically when you log into a computer, you can see everything green. For example, you can run a test or look at this this profile that's I want to turn engine brakes on. It's going to give you all the switches that need to be green, and boom, you see a red one right away. You're going to know what to look for. So that's what we've been talking about, engine brakes, and then just talking about how they work, and if it's not electrical, and if the connection's making it to the rocker box housing or the ejector harness, that there's not oil causing the connection to be lost, and if that's not the case, and checking to see if it's manual, and adjusting your valves, guys, and making sure not to skip over adjusting your engine brakes. I appreciate everybody that's joined us today. It turned out to be a great show. I'm glad I was been able to get on and share this information for you guys. My goal is that we share as much information as possible and you're able to take something away. Do you guys do DOT spec and diagnostics? And is it by appointment or walk-in? MX-13. We do work on MX-13s, PACCAR. We do work on them, preferably by appointment, because we wouldn't if we are busy. If our schedule is tight or our schedule is full, we would hate for you just to stop and just wait. So definitely call us 972-225-3017. Keep in mind this week coming up right now is going to be 4th of July weekend, so we're going to have a holiday coming up. So keep that in mind, but make sure to schedule your appointment, 972-225-3017. And we have somebody in the front office that can handle your scheduling. And once we get you in, if it's something that's lengthy, I would suggest dropping the truck off. If it's something you're saying a DOT spec, that's going to be and diagnostic. So if depending on what the diagnostic is, it's kind of tough to give you an actual time frame on when we can get that done. But give us a call, 972-225-3017. Definitely give you guys a hand. Daniel I was going to move to Fort Worth back in 2020 from California, but didn't plan out. I found you guys shop researching before moving out there. Still want to move one day. Would definitely use you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, housing, that's pretty, it's not going down. Like the cost of housing is not going down. It doesn't seem that. And then the lending, the interest rates are so high when it comes to lending. Even when it comes to buying new trucks, the lending is so high. Everybody is reconsidering even moving or selling their homes because they're in actual mortgage with low interest rates. So everybody's kind of like reconsidering why get out of this mortgage with a low interest rate and get into a bigger interest rate with mortgage just for a bigger home. Sometimes they're waiting it out. So we'll see what happens. We don't see any of the housing prices going down. They're kind of gonna I think they're just gonna stay level. But I'm hoping by next year. Now, since we're talking about interest rates, this is another important reason why it's important to keep up with maintenance on your truck, because these aren't just throwaway trucks. These trucks need to last you a long time, and getting out here and getting into a new truck with a high interest rate is definitely just going to cut more into your profit. So it's better to budget maintenance on your truck, and so that you have money already set aside to get these trucks maintained, and you're not waiting on the side of the road or broke down or anything like that. So definitely good good vibes. I appreciate you sharing that. Every hour straight from the shaker. Yeah, I guess you're talking about your road service, man. Be safe out there, man. Those road calls can be pretty dangerous. Does flatbed per mile pay more than reefer or drive-in loads? Right now, it's like, guys, if you have insight, like if you're pulling flatbed, I'm going by just basically what I'm reading, and with produce going as much as it is, and manufacturing on housing is going as fast as it is. I mean, builders on houses are, and I'm not saying they're making the houses cheaper. Eventually they're going to have to come down on the houses prices, but flatbed is getting paid well, reefer is getting paid well, construction's keeping flatbed going. Of course, consumers that eat is keeping reefer going. So both equipment is not going to be cheap. Dry van is probably going to be the cheapest to get in, because all you just need is a dry van. Reefers, you got to definitely get a box that has a good reefer on it. You don't want to go cheap with reefers, because it can definitely cost you some money. Coverage on reefers are going to be higher when it comes to insurance. Dry vans, like I mentioned, you're going to be pulling dry van freight's probably going to be more common. So depending on what lane you're moving, it all depends on what it's paying. We talked about how Texas have decent freight coming out of here, but coming back to Texas, they're not paying anything. And there's just not, it's always been that way, in the same way to going down to Florida. So flatbed is not cheap either. You're going to need to buy, your tarps, your chains, your equipment for your truck. You're going to need a headache rack. Be able to store all this equipment and extra stuff. So a flatbed is, you're going to get paid more, but there's more work as well. Tarping them, you're going to have to learn how to tarp, which is getting on that flatbed and covering up the load, whatever it is. Now, flatbed is going to be a little bit easier to unload. It's not going to take as long as reefer or dry van. Dry van and reefer, sometimes reefers take long time to unload. Most of the time with flatbeds, you're going either on a site, they're going to unload you with a forklift or a crane pretty quickly. So that's something to consider. Daniel says, I have a 2013 Cummins ISX 15. Got the truck brand new, 100 miles. Wow. Nice. Had a lot of issues. Fuel pump, sensor, EGR valve, EGR cooler, oil cooler housing, and of course the infamous DPF. Well, you pretty much know that engine. You had it since 2013. That's what is that, 10 years? How many miles you got on it now, man? I appreciate you sharing that. That's that truck inside out now. So yeah, check your timing on it. If you're over 500,000 miles, if you're invested in the timing tool, there's wedges for the Cummins ISX 15. Is if it's still dual overhead cam, I think it just went single head overhead cam. We got single overhead cam if it's X15. Dual overhead cam, you're still running dual overhead cam, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But definitely adjust the valves and put the wedges in there. Put the wedges to make sure the cam's timed. Because no, actually, yeah, definitely run those wedges. Because if those are the ones that have the gear bolted on the front of the cam, and they can turn over time, and it's gonna mess your timing up. Those are the ones I was mentioning earlier that is more often, because like a DD15 cam, the actual gear is made onto the cam, so it doesn't turn at all. On a ISX on Cummins, you can actually remove the gear from the actual cam, which is definitely over time can run on you. It can turn on you. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. I'm about to wrap the show up. We talked about engine brakes, so I'm glad everybody that's joined us. Appreciate everybody. I think I got to everybody's comments. So we discussed engine brakes. If you guys are in the DFW area and if you'd like to get service, make sure to hit us up, 972-225-3017. We'll be happy to service you. We have friendly staff up front. You can do your research on us, and we have technicians on the back ready to go. We do OEM repairs. If you have elimination or modifications on your after treatment system, unfortunately, we don't service you guys. Nothing against you guys, but we check out my other videos on why not to delete. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so next time we go live, you're notified. Share our information, share our channel to your friends, your family, anybody that's in the industry that can use this information. Make sure to share our information. Hit that like button, guys. Thanks.